Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to address some of the questions that I have been asked repeatedly over the past year and a half. The main question that comes up is what therapies that I've used for Dylan. Now I know I've spoken about some of the therapies throughout different videos, but today I just wanted to do a video solely on the therapies that we did for Dylan when he was first diagnosed. So let's just dive straight on in. When Dylan was about 18 months, I know I've mentioned before, I started noticing things about him, like the eye contact, stimming a lot. He would do this a lot with his hands, and he was pulling at his ears, and he was very sensory, like he'd put his hand down his pants if he'd done a poo and he would smear it on the walls. This is called poo smearing. It's a sensory reaction. If you look at our video on potty training, I talk more about that and how to help your child not do that. If you notice your child is possibly not developing at the same milestones that they're meant to, or you're noticing they're very sensory to light, people, sound, all that kind of thing, the first protocol is go to your doctor. The doctor will then refer you to the people that you need to see to get your child assessed. Now the problem is, to get your child assessed can take a long time, and this period of waiting is hell. No other way of putting it. It is frustrating, it's confusing. You want to help your child, but you don't know how, you don't know where to begin. When I was in this period of not knowing what was going on, a friend of mine said, actually, I know a friend who is a play therapist. I got put in touch with this lovely lady called Amanda, and she came round to our house and I spoke to her, and she was like an angel sent to me, because she said, look, I can't diagnose your child, but what I can do is I can teach you some things to do. We can do some play therapy with him. We can try and engage him a little bit and see where we go. So this was huge for me, because this was the first time I'd heard of any play therapy. And she came around to the house once a week, and she would do things like blow bubbles. And she would try and get eye contact from Dylan, and she would try and encourage him to ask for more, or even if it was, clapping or jumping, it was engaging. And then we would do things like, we'd get a big colorful sheet and we'd lift it up and we'd shake it and we'd put it on top of his head, and he would love this stimulation. And she also put me on to a couple of books for me to read. So this was my first step in helping Dylan, was learning about play therapy and how I could help him at home. And this really gave me a sense of, I want to say control, but not more control, but being able to help your child. Like, it's huge. We talk about trying to help our children, and how frustrated I was earlier this year when Dylan was sick and I felt like I couldn't help him. You feel helpless. So to be able to meet Amanda and to get her to be able to give me some tips on how to even engage with my son, and and being able to play with him, this was the start of our very, very special bond. So the first thing we did was play therapy. The other thing that I did was the Early Years Centre, and if you're in the UK, again, I'm sorry, I don't know about the rest of the world, but I'm sure if you ask your doctor, there must be an equivalent in your area. It's an Early Years Centre, and they had a little, almost like a play group that was on a Monday and a Wednesday morning, and I would go with Dylan. It was coming together with a group of parents who, we were all kind of on the same journey, and this was hugely comforting to meet other parents who also were not sleeping, also were noticing things that weren't quite right, and were waiting diagnoses. And this is where I met Ayan, Riaz's mum, and I met a lot of other really lovely friends who I'm still in touch with today in this play group. And also the women that worked there, because they had worked with so many children before, they would give me great tips for at home, or trying to get them to sleep, or all these kind of things. So that was the second thing that we did, was we joined a play group of children who also had special needs, but maybe were not diagnosed yet. Because the hard part is, when you're waiting to be diagnosed, is you can't access any of these therapies. So here in the UK, we have the NHS, and in the NHS, you get a certain amount of play therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy for free, basically, on our NHS system, which is amazing. We're incredibly lucky for that. But yeah, so until you're waiting for a diagnosis, there's not much help you can get. So we did pay for the play therapist. And then the Early Years Centre, that was just a free play group that we went to. So once Dylan got his diagnosis, They then put us in touch with a specialist nursery setting that might be right for him, which was Little Hillbrook, which is in Tooting, which he went to for 2 years. And again, life-changing. You know, a lot of people ask me, should I send my child to a normal nursery or a specialist nursery? Should we go to a specialist school or a mainstream school? It is down to your individual child. My personal experience was, I felt if he couldn't tell me how his day was, that I didn't want him going to a mainstream setting. So we sent him to a specialist setting, which is also really great, because if your child is nonverbal, sending them to a specialist nursery or a specialist setting, they're going to get twice as much help, 3 times as much help as if they were mainstream settings. So Dylan had intensive speech therapy almost every day. He went 5 mornings a week to this nursery, and then he ended up going 5 full days before he went to school. You know, 3 times a week, they did play therapy, they did occupational therapy, they helped guide me. This is, for me, really important because I had support. You need support. Once he got his diagnosis, he started speech therapy. Now on the NHS, he got speech therapy. I think this all comes down to the EHCP plan that they get given, which dictates how much help your child needs. Now, one point I'm going to say to you, when you are doing your child's EHCP plan, or if you're writing anything down, I know this sounds terrible, but make your child sound like he or she is on their worst day. Because we're always so positive, right? We always want to be like, oh, our child's amazing and this is great. But autism is hard, flippin' hard. And when you're writing these forms, you need to write what your child is like on those worst days. Because you might get given the forms on a really good day and go, well, actually, I'm really happy and he's really great and he can do this, this, and this. Don't say what they can do, always put what they can't do, and in an extreme circumstance, because that's how you're going to get the help that your child needs. When I was writing this form, I cried my eyes out. I hated writing it. And also when you see it written down on a piece of paper, you're like, yeah, no, he doesn't sleep, and yeah, he's not potty trained, and yeah, he doesn't speak, and yeah, it's really hard. And yeah, you could be a bit exhausted after you've written all these papers out. But once that goes in, that is what is going to give you the funding to be able to get access to this help that your child needs. So Dylan did speech therapy. He did 4 times a week speech therapy. He did play therapy once a week. I took him to an occupational therapist because he was a tiptoe walker. Problem is, when they tiptoe walk, they can shorten their Achilles heel. So you just need to make sure you stretch out their feet every night. And we incorporate this massage technique that we learned about in occupational therapy at nighttime. So it's part of when I massage his feet and I stretch out his calf muscles, because if your child is a tiptoe walker, their muscles are going to be super tight. So make sure at nighttime you try and stretch out their Achilles heel. Am I saying that right? Achilles heel, Achilles heel, Achilles heel. Achilles heel, you know what I mean. Stretch it out and stretch out their calf muscles, and that will help them not become too tight, because if they do become too tight, then they're going to be tiptoe walkers forever. So you want to make sure you massage that out. And he didn't have very good core strength, and he had no pincer grips. So we took him to an occupational therapist who recommended specialist cutlery. You can look on Amazon. They have different specialist cutlery. He still can't use a knife and fork. He's still using a spoon, but we're working on it. That's, our little personal goal this year is to use a knife and fork, but he can use a spoon now. So apart from the therapies you've heard of probably, or I've just spoken about, the speech therapy, occupational therapy, and play therapy, we also did other therapies that I mentioned in my book. I'll put the link below for my book. We tried every therapy possible. We tried equine therapy, which is horse riding. There's a lot of charities around the UK and around America as well that have horse riding for disabled children, special needs children. And actually they started doing it at his specialist nursery. They started taking him once a week and he really liked it. Now, for some children, equine therapy, working with horses, is incredible. We have one friend whose son used to stim literally 24 hours a day, would just go all day. But as soon as he sat on a horse, he stopped. The silence was golden for his mum, and just seeing him so happy on a horse, he was just so calm and quiet and just really enjoying it. So equine therapy for that little boy was incredible. When Dylan was on a horse, I'm like looking at him going, I'm waiting for this aha moment. Yeah, nothing really happened, but he loved it and it was great, but it wasn't life-changing for us. Swimming, however, is amazing for Dylan. Swimming calms him down no end. So we found a specialist teacher who, again, a specialist school will also have swimming involved. Again, this is why sometimes a specialist setting is better for your child, because they do have access to all these different therapies, which is great. So Dylan went swimming with his specialist nursery, and I realized just how amazing it was for him. So we got a specialist swim teacher privately who taught Dylan every Saturday morning, and eventually Luca joined in too. But when Dylan's in the water, he is just so calm and so happy. And even if you can get your child into the sea, if you live near the sea is incredible, because it also has a lot of electrolytes and magnesium, and there's something about the seawater that just calms the nervous system down completely. So for Dylan, when he's in the sea, first of all, he gets all like giddy and excited, and then when he comes out, he's just the calmest. So for us, swimming was a real game changer. The other therapies that I've tried is ABA, that's applied behavioural analysis. Now, there's people who think that ABA isn't that great, maybe it's controversial. I mean, maybe it was controversial back in the 70s, I think, because some people thought it was like training a dog. You know, you ignore the bad behavior, you reward the good behavior. But for us, it was really good because Dylan is very stubborn. And I'm sure you probably find this, like, our children are stubborn. When they don't want to do something, they don't want to do something. But in life, you do have to be pushed out of your comfort zone. And I think this is important, not to put your child into a bubble. You know, I did that with Dylan too. You know, you want to put them in a bubble, you want to make sure everything's okay for them, everything's easy for them, but life is not easy. And we are preparing our children, for all our children, not just our special needs children, for life beyond us when they're like, you know, 18, 20, like getting a job, looking after themselves. You know, the real world is not this circle that we have for them right now. So for me, I'm always thinking of Dylan as an adult. And so we got ABA, we got an ABA therapist. Again, it's not funded here in the UK currently. I know in America, under some healthcare plans, ABA can be, a certain amount of hours can be. If you're from America and you do get ABA, if you could comment below and let us know, that would be great, what it's like, because I'm only just reading, obviously, from what I'm researching on the net. But in the UK, ABA is not funded, so we funded it ourselves. It is quite expensive. It works out at about, depending on who you have, it can be anywhere from £25 an hour to £50 an hour. And they recommend twice a week for 3-4 hours. So it's quite expensive. But for us, we've, you know, made some sacrifices and it was worth it for us. And what the ABA therapist helped us work on for Dylan was putting his shoes on, trying to wear different clothes, trying to try different foods, because before ABA, he didn't really eat much at all. Like, he ate all the beige foods, you know what I'm talking about? The fish fingers, the gluten-free pasta, all gluten-free, but still beige. If you'd like to know more about food and what I learned in the whole ABA process and helping your child eat some more food, I'll put a link here to the other video. I feel like I'm doing adverts for my videos here, but I have already covered it, so no point covering it again, right? But the ABA was great at teaching us how to get him to eat more food. And at first, you know, it was like the way that our therapist did with us is, right, Dylan, we're going to do 5 things today, and 4 things are going to be completely whatever you want to do. So maybe that was Minecraft or chasing games or bubbles. And then there was one thing that had to be adult-led. So one thing we wanted to do, and that could be just putting a dot on a piece of paper. Well, the first time we asked Dylan to put a dot on a piece of paper, he screamed and yelled and had a meltdown for an hour. And I was in the corner just crying, watching this therapist. And the therapist was great. The therapist did not react at all. He just sat there and was like, okay, put the dot on the piece of paper. Put the dot on the piece of paper. And that's all he kept saying. And Dylan was thrashing everything around, kicking, screaming, yelling. But you know what? After an hour, he did it. And I think sometimes ABA can be a bit controversial because they're like, well, why are you making this child upset? But in my view, you know, I saw Dylan that first time. I'm not going to lie, the first time we did this session where he had to put a dot on a piece of paper and he cried, I said, I'm not doing this again. He's so distressed, he's so upset, I don't like this. But then the therapist said, look, the next time we do this, the meltdowns will be shorter. And sure enough, they were. The first time it was an hour and 20 minutes. The next time it was an hour. The next time after that was like 30 minutes. And then it was 10 minutes. And then after the 5th session, Dylan knew what was expected of him, so did it. And the next thing is he's scrawling his name on a piece of paper. Couldn't understand it, but who cares? He was writing his name down on a piece of paper. So I really saw that. And with these therapies, you do kind of have to stick with it a little bit. And even though everything in your parental bones in your body is going, no, please don't push my child out of his comfort zone. No, just protect them, just look after them. I want them to be happy. Of course, we want them to be happy, but we also want them to do well. And that's the same thing with speech therapy. You have to really push them. If they really want that chocolate, they might scream and shout and whatever, but all you have to do is look at me, just look at me, just look at me. Communication. There you go, you get it. Same thing. Just say, and then as soon as he said, I gave it to him the chocolate. And then eventually he was like, peas, and I'd give it to him. And it's a lot of work. These therapies are not easy. And also they're not a magic thing either. You don't just do a therapy and go, oh, there you go, we're all fixed now. Because your child is constantly evolving. Dylan is constantly evolving. And the therapies that worked for Dylan when he was younger really gave him a good foundation for who he is today, how I got him so far. But now I'm looking at different therapies for him because he's at a different stage of his life and he needs other ways of helping him for anxieties and things like that. I've also done some really balmy things. So I once took him to a shaman. That was interesting. I watched this documentary called The Horse Boy. If you haven't seen it, it is really sweet. I watched it when Dylan was just diagnosed. So that was 9 years ago? 9 years ago, and it was made, so it's about 15 years old now, but it's called The Horse Boy. I'm sure you can still get it. And it's about this one family's journey on trying to help their child. And again, horses was it for this child. And they went on this massive big journey around the world to try and find the best horse therapy they could. And they ended up in Mongolia. Anyway, I won't spoil it for you, but go watch it. You will cry. I did. But I thought... I'm laughing at myself because in this movie they went to go see a shaman. So I thought, I'm going to find a shaman for Dylan. So I took him to this shaman, and a shaman is like a spiritual healer. And, I'm trying everything here. I've got Palo Santo wood, I've got sage, I've got crystals, I've got it all, anything to try and help him. And anyway, I took him to the shaman and she started like banging this drum and like just getting the smoke around him. And Dylan is sitting there literally going, he wasn't distressed. He thought it was hilarious, but it didn't work. So I didn't do that. Oh, the other therapy I tried was basically like gardening for kids. This was really cool, actually. I learned a lot to make a sensory garden. And you could do this anywhere, whether you're in an apartment, whether you're in a house. You get a little sensory garden and you can get like lavender. There's one called lamb's ear. It's a really soft petal, and Dylan used to love rubbing it on his face. You can get like chamomile flowers, lots of scents and sensory things. So you could just plant a box, put it on their windowsill, put it outside. We're lucky enough to have a garden, so we did a sensory garden. In our new house, we can have a sensory garden, so I'm really excited about that. Also, like growing potatoes in a big sack. And he would love putting his hand in the dirt and he would like water it and just watching, getting them back into the ground, I guess, kind of earthing them, they said it was called. So, they say that our children are in their own world a lot, and the whole idea is to try and, kind of ground them a bit. I don't like saying bringing them into our world because I prefer it in their world. And, when Dylan couldn't talk, I was like, right, I'm going into your world. Wherever you are, I'm going. So that's what I call it. So the gardening therapy was really cool and really easy to do no matter where you are. Oh, therapy dogs. So it's not really a therapy as such, but there are again charities where they have dogs. So if you don't have the space to get a dog, you're not sure if you want to get a dog or not, because a dog is a big responsibility. We've got Rosie, who's down here by my feet. And Rosie has been amazing, and she's a great therapy dog for Dylan. But it's a lot of hard work. When she was a puppy, it was a disaster because she was peeing and pooing everywhere. Funny story, I was potty training Naya and Rosie at the same time, and one day I came home and Rosie was doing a poo outside, and guess who else was doing a poo outside? Naya. She went to the garden and I was like, no, and she turned around and she goes, doggy do poo-poo outside, Naya do poo-poo outside. And I was like, no, not quite. But yeah, so just if you want to get a dog, make sure you're at home a lot and make sure you have the time to train the dog as well as the child. Once you get past, 7-8 months past the chewing phase, then you're okay. But if this is not an option for you, there's charities that they can come around to your house for an hour a week or 2 hours a week, or you can go see them. And these therapy dogs are great for, you can stroke them and pat them, and it really just calms your whole nervous system down. A lot of hospitals do offer, so do ask your local hospital if your child has to go for like blood test or appointments, they can actually make sure there's a therapy dog there with them. And also, while I'm on the mention of hospitals, they always have a play therapist on hand in the hospital. So if you are going in, when you're making an appointment, please do ask if if there's a play therapist available. Say my child's autistic, and it would really help if we had a play therapist. And the play therapist comes and usually blows bubbles or stickers and tries to distract your child. This works for a lot of children. For Dylan, it worked when he was up until about 5, and then after 5 it didn't work anymore. But you can also see if the hospital has a therapy dog, or if they can get a therapy dog in for that session. So we've had a therapy dog come into Dylan once before when he had to have a blood test, and this was great. Now we're just asking if Rosie can come in. In fact, I'm going to try and get her some paperwork to be an emotional support dog. She's going to have to go to school for it. Sorry, Rosie. It's a bit like a guide dog, but it's an emotional support dog, which means she'd be able to go on airplanes with us and ferries and all that kind of stuff. And hopefully appointments, because I think she'd make a great therapy dog. Not right now, she's still too young, but I think she will after she's finished her training. There are also some crazy way out there therapies that are out there at the moment. I try and stay away from those a little bit because I know what kind of works for Dylan. And I've told you I've just done some crazy therapies in my time. But and none of them really helped. But every child is individual, and what might work for Dylan might not work for other kids. So you guys, I hope this has helped a little bit. Sorry, I was a bit all over the shop, but I've got so much information I wanted to get out there for you. Again, I have covered quite a lot of these therapies in a lot of my other videos, so do please check them out. If you have any other questions, or you've tried therapies that you think are amazing and I haven't mentioned, please do put them below, and let's all help each other. All right, you guys, please do give us a like and a subscribe, and we will see you next week.